Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we're going to dive into a quiet but powerful story, a moment where pressure, responsibility, and love collide. When Diep is pushed to her limits by work, money, and the future of Nye, one simple choice from James changes everything. Can standing beside someone be stronger than solving all their problems? If you enjoy heartfelt, realistic stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our upcoming videos. Morning light slips through the dusty window panes, thin and pale, settling across stacks of paperwork piled high on the old wooden table. The papers are slightly curled at the edges, some marked with notes, others stamped and restamped, each sheet carrying its own quiet weight. The workshop smells faintly of wood shavings and machine oil, familiar and grounding. Yet today, the air feels heavier than usual. A man in a simple, neatly pressed shirt steps inside. He pauses briefly at the doorway, eyes adjusting to the dim interior before moving forward. He is the government representative sent by Comrade Than. His shoes are clean, his expression neutral, professional. This is not his first visit to a small workshop like this, and it will not be his last. Diep rises from her chair to greet him. Her movements are calm, practiced. Her voice when she speaks is steady and polite. Only her eyes reveal the tension she has been carrying since dawn. Today you're here to help me with the procedures for expanding the peeling workshop, she says, gesturing toward the back of the building. She explains carefully, step by step. The expansion will add 25 square meters behind the current structure. 3 new machines are planned, 2 planers and 1 support unit, to increase output and improve consistency. With the machines, she will need 5 more workers. The drying area will also be expanded, spreading to 2 additional locations to handle the increased volume. As she speaks, the official opens his notebook and begins to write. His pen moves steadily, occasionally pausing as he asks a clarifying question. His tone remains serious, almost cautious. The new law requires all workshops to pay taxes clearly and consistently, he says without looking up. If higher inspectors come and find discrepancies, it won't just affect you, it could cost people their positions. We could all lose our jobs. Diep nods slowly. She has heard variations of this warning before, but it never becomes easier to absorb. Inside her chest, a familiar anxiety rises. It is not fear in the simple sense. It is responsibility. Responsibility toward the workers who rely on this place for their income. Responsibility toward the suppliers. Responsibility toward Nye. She points toward the front of the workshop, where the sound of distant machinery hums steadily, even now. If my paperwork is incomplete or there are mistakes, she says, choosing her words carefully, please help me correct them so everything complies with state regulations. The conversation stretches on. Each answer seems to invite another question. Measurements, machine serial numbers, worker contracts, safety standards, tax brackets. The list feels endless. With every new topic, the pressure settles deeper onto Diep's shoulders. Business has been improving. Orders have been increasing. On paper, this should feel like progress. Yet progress comes with a cost. Taxes rise, regulations tighten. Margins that were once thin now feel fragile, as if one wrong calculation could cause everything to collapse. Outside, the machines continue their low, constant hum, a reminder that life and work do not pause for paperwork. The sound steadies her, even as her thoughts spiral. She offers the official a polite smile, nodding at the appropriate moments, answering with clarity and respect. But inside, a storm is building. She thinks of Nye at home. School fees, meals, clothes. The quiet questions a child never asks out loud, but carries all the same. How does she balance raising Nye and keeping the workshop alive? The weight presses down on her chest, making her breath slightly heavier. Still, her voice does not waver. She knows that if the workshop fails, it is not just a business that disappears. It is Nye's last anchor, her last sense of stability. The sunlight slowly shifts across the floor, inch by inch, indifferent to the quiet battle unfolding within these walls. By the time the official closes his notebook and stands to leave, the day already feels long. Late afternoon arrives with a sharp, year-end chill. The wind carries dust along the village road, brushing past low houses and bare trees. Near the roadside, a woman stands holding several plastic bags filled with homemade banana bread. Steam fogs the inside of the bags, and the warm, sweet smell drifts into the air. "Sister, want some banana bread?" she calls out gently. "I made it myself. 10,000 dong a bag, really delicious." People slow their steps. Some stop. The scent alone is enough to draw attention. A woman peers into one of the bags and smiles. "Looks tasty," she says. "Did you make these last night?" The seller nods. "Yes." She hands over 2 bags with quick, practiced movements. Her fingers move automatically now, even though her body feels heavy. Each bag represents a night without real sleep. Ripe bananas chosen carefully, sugar measured by instinct, mixing, baking, waiting, over and over again. With Tet approaching, everything feels urgent. Money for gifts, money for Nai, money for workshop taxes. There is no category that feels optional anymore. She watches the stream of people passing by, a mix of resilience and exhaustion tightening in her chest. Selling on the roadside is not just about earning money, it is proof. Proof that she can stand on her own. Proof that she can provide for the child waiting at home. Every smile she offers hides the same quiet question: will this be enough? The wind picks up, swirling dust and scraps of paper across the road. She tightens her grip on the small wad of money in her pocket. Her eyes drift toward the horizon, where the sun is slowly sinking, turning the sky pale gold and soft orange. In that moment, she feels small and strong at the same time. A roadside seller, yes, but also a woman refusing to disappear under pressure. Like a small flame burning through winter air, fragile but persistent. The road gradually empties. Fewer people pass. The bags grow lighter. Her resolve, however, does not fade. It stays with her, quiet and unbreakable, carrying her forward into the uncertain evening. The sun slips fully behind the bamboo grove, leaving behind a single streak of orange stretched thin across the sky. The light fades quickly, and the village road grows quieter, the earlier bustle replaced by the soft rustle of wind through dry leaves. The air turns colder, sharper against the skin, the kind of cold that settles in slowly and stays. The roadside seller adjusts the remaining bags in her hand, counting them without really thinking. Just a few left. Her shoulders ache, not just from standing all afternoon, but from the weight of the day itself. The workshop, the paperwork, the numbers that refuse to balance neatly, and always at the center of everything, Nai. A car slows as it approaches, its headlights cutting through the dimness. The vehicle pulls over near the roadside. The door opens and James steps out. He pauses when he sees the scene in front of him. 2 women standing by the road, plastic bags of banana bread hanging from their hands, faces tired but composed. For a brief moment, he simply looks as if trying to process what he's seeing. "James," he says instinctively, then stops himself, shaking his head slightly. "Oh my goodness. You 2 are selling goods? You're making banana bread to sell today?" His voice carries a mix of surprise and concern. It's not loud, not dramatic, but it's honest. The kind of reaction that comes when something hits closer to home than expected. The seller nods. She forces a small smile, the kind that feels automatic by now. "Yes, I've been making it since last night," she says. "It's almost Tet, so things are really busy." James looks around. The empty stretch of road, the cold air, the few remaining bags. He doesn't need an explanation to understand the rest. He sees the effort hidden behind the calm tone, the exhaustion tucked behind the polite smile. For a moment, he says nothing. He feels pressure rising inside him, a familiar weight he hasn't quite learned how to name. It echoes a question that has been following him for days, maybe longer. Can he really take care of Diep and me? Not in words, not in promises, but in the quiet, difficult moments like this. He takes a step closer. His voice lowers, gentler now. Let me drive you two home. The offer is simple. No conditions, no explanations. But it cuts through the cold evening like a small beam of light. Not dramatic, just there. Inside James, thoughts rush forward all at once. He thinks of Diep's days, split between paperwork, machines, workers, and a child who has already lost too much. He thinks of sleepless nights, of bread baking in the dark while the rest of the village sleeps. He thinks of how strong she is and how heavy that strength must feel when carried alone. He also feels something else, a pull, a quiet certainty that standing beside her matters more than anything else he could be doing right now. The wind passes between them, carrying the faint smell of smoke from nearby kitchens. Somewhere, families are gathering for dinner. Laughter drifts faintly through the air, distant but real. James opens the car door and waits. He doesn't rush them. He doesn't repeat himself. There is a brief hesitation, the kind that comes not from doubt, but from habit, from being used to doing everything alone. Then she nods. They move toward the car together, carefully placing the remaining bags inside. The door closes with a soft, solid sound. James walks around to the driver's side, his movements quiet, focused. As he starts the engine, the hum fills the space between them. The car pulls away from the roadside, leaving behind the stretch of road where the day has been spent standing, calling out, waiting. Inside the vehicle, the silence is not awkward. It's heavy, but not uncomfortable. The kind of silence that comes after long hours of effort, when words feel unnecessary. James keeps his eyes on the road, but his thoughts stay with the passenger beside him. He knows this is not something that can be fixed with a single gesture. A ride home doesn't solve taxes. It doesn't erase regulations or sleepless nights. It doesn't make the workshop safe from inspectors or guarantees future stability. But it does something else. It says you don't have to carry this alone tonight. As the car moves deeper into the village, lights appear in windows one by one. The road narrows. Familiar turns approach. The rhythm of driving becomes steady, almost soothing. Diep looks out the window, watching the scenery pass. Her body feels tired in a way that reaches her bones. Yet beneath the exhaustion, something shifts. The pressure does not disappear, but it eases just slightly. She thinks of Nye waiting at home, of the promise she made to herself, to protect what remains of their small world. She thinks of the workshop, of workers who will return tomorrow expecting stability. She thinks of the road ahead, still uncertain, still demanding. And then she thinks of this moment, of someone choosing to stop, to notice, to stay. James breaks the silence quietly. You don't have to explain, he says. I can see how hard you're trying. His words are simple, but they land carefully, as if placed exactly where they need to be. She nods once. That is all. The car slows as they approach their destination. The engine softens, then idles. James parks and turns off the ignition. The sudden quiet feels almost loud. For a moment, neither of them moves. This is not a dramatic turning point. There is no declaration, no grand speech, just a shared understanding settling into place. James knows he can't fix everything, but he also knows this. Walking away would be the easiest option, and it is no longer the one he wants. In his mind, a promise forms, not spoken aloud, not yet, but clear. He will stand by Diep through this difficult time. He will help her take care of Nye, not as a hero, not as a savior, but as someone willing to stay when staying is hard. They step out of the car together. The night wraps around them. cool and quiet. Somewhere inside the house, a light is on. Tomorrow will bring more questions, more paperwork, more uncertainty. But tonight, as they walk forward side by side, the road feels just a little less heavy.
Khi sức khỏe ông Hoang âm thầm xấu đi, ông giấu kín các triệu chứng và tự mình nhập viện, rồi nói với bà Huyền đó là một chuyến công tác. Về nhà, Diệp cảm thấy có điều gì đó không ổn và phát hiện ra hồ sơ bệnh án của ông Hoang. James, Diệp và bà Huyền vội vã đến bệnh viện và thấy người đàn ông quyền lực một thời giờ xanh xao, yếu ớt và được bao quanh bởi các máy móc. Trong giây lát, ông Hoang dịu dàng hơn khi thấy James nắm tay mình. Cho đến khi Diệp bước vào, ông lại trở nên lạnh lùng và đòi biết lý khi cô đến đây. Diệp giữ thái độ tôn trọng và im lặng, đặt trái cây bên giường ông, trong khi bà Huyền cuối cùng cũng đối mặt với phán xét cứng đầu của ông chồng. Diệp lặng lẽ rời đi và tin rằng sự hiện diện của cô sẽ làm gánh nặng cho họ, cho đến khi ông Hoang giọng khàn đặc run rẩy và thì thầm: "Ở lại", ám chỉ một sự thay đổi đau đớn.